But
Cool.
yeah, it's great to see you. I'm glad we finally got a chance to sit down and chop it up. It seems like this has been a long awaited opportunity that just kept passing us by.
Yes, definitely. And I'm so grateful to be here and be in community with you. I've also watched you and saw the good things you do and glad to be here.
Thank you so much, sister. I'm so humbled just to get that affirmation from you. You know, it's all about the people, and we're really just trying to enlighten the people, strengthen the people, help the people recognize their own greatness, their own goodness, so that they
I
can
love that.
skills. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so that's, what I'm doing here with this Prison to Promise podcast. I want to highlight the achievements of formerly incarcerated people, so that other formerly incarcerated people or currently incarcerated people or people who are currently under the boot, so to speak, of the criminal legal system can see other examples of how they too can become successful, because there's other people like them who are doing it and who have done it. And at the same time, I'll probably be bringing on some people who also work in the system, who are also trying to help people realize their greatness. But without further ado, I'm going to ask you, sis, to maybe introduce yourself to the listeners. Tell listeners who you are and a little bit about yourself and your background.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for that. That was a mouthful, but it was a mouthful that was well appreciated. So my name is Helen Skipper. I prefer to be called Skip. I am traumatized by the name Helen. It has to do with my grandmother and a switch when I was in trouble as a youngster. And I don't know if you noticed, but I was always in trouble. So therefore, at my later stage, I prefer to be called Skip. Um,
Skip.
where do I start? There is so much to talk about, but let's just throw this out here first. Those of us who are directly impacted deserve a seat at all tables, deserve to be in a process from the top down, not from the bottom up,
Absolutely.
when policy and procedures build. And this is what I base whatever I do on. So let's just jump into it. Am I directly impacted? Yes, I am. Do I call myself formally impacted? No, I don't, because there's never a formally when you are tarred with the brush of the criminal justice system.
That's what you
Um,
life.
what I'm doing now, I'm an executive director now, but am I still tarred with the brush? Yes, I am. Well, let's take it back a step. Can't nobody see me, so ain't nobody got to say anything or laugh. And if you laugh, I'm gonna hear you. But I'm like a day over 18. And I started going back and forth into the crowd. I see you laughing. I see you. I started going back into the system when I was 18. So I didn't do long time, but from the years between 18 and my early 40s, every year I was either locked up, getting released, or as we say in the old school hustler style, throwing a brick at the penitentiary, which means I was about ready to get locked up.
Sure enough, I hear you there.
Or I was getting violated on a parole violation. So I did my time, not in straight time, but on the installment plan.
Yeah.
Call me Queen Recidivism,
Mm.
because I was stuck on that hamster wheel of recidivism for years, for
Mm.
years. I just didn't learn my lesson. There are other things that were present in my life, like substance abuse, mental illness, homelessness. I literally went from one system to the next. No system helped prepare me in wellness to live my best life. And this is why I stayed on this hamster wheel of recidivism. So if I'm getting released from jail and you're sending me to a shelter, which is nothing but a baby jail, just without the COs, but with security guards. And it's also a step up from the street, because everything you could do out in the street, you're doing in the shelter system.
Absolutely.
It wasn't but so long I could come in there with my head on straight and have blinders on and be like, I've got to do XYZ, I've got to work, I've got to this, I've got to be a responsible member of society. But in looking at the environment that I was in and was having forced to come to every night to rest my head, sooner or later I fell.
Every
And
time.
And the fall would be gradual. I'd always have a good job. I've always had good jobs. Fortunately, I have a little bit of intelligence. I've worked on Wall Street. I've done bookkeeping and things like that. So basically, I could come home and land on my feet.
Yeah.
But in going in and out of these same traumatizing systems, sooner or later, I'm saying, man, I wonder what's happening on the block. Anything is better than this. And I would start sliding out to the block gradually, spending half a day, and then half a day became a day, and I lost my bed and had to sit for my bed again. But that didn't stop me, because the minute I got paid, I'm sliding out to the block again. And that slide out to the block started becoming a day, 2 days, 3 days. And finally, I'm like, forget whatever I left back there. Like, I'm having fun. I'm making money. I'm getting high. I'm hustling.
Yeah.
I don't need to go back there. I don't
Yeah.
need to go back to this shelter. And I lose everything once again. And I start permanently living on the block. And sooner or later, I would get caught. So maybe I wasn't a good hustler. Maybe I wasn't a good drug dealer. Maybe I wasn't a good thief.
Yeah.
I made money doing it, but eventually I always got caught. Back in
Wow.
the system, and then we rinse and repeat and do this over and over and over again from the age of 18, like I said, until my early 40s. The last time I went in, and they actually sent me to a drug program, I left the program, but then there was a life altering moment that happened. And if people are familiar with recovery, and substance abuse was a big part of my life, and that's what led me into the criminal justice system. But there's this thing about recovery, that recovery is not when you say I should get it. It is when I say I want it, I need it, I have to have it. And
Yeah.
for a long time, I never said that. But when I had this life altering kind of experience, I was defeated, and I was ready to embrace and lean into recovery.
Let
And when
me
I,
ask you this real quick.
sure.
Out of all those times that you found yourself on the rinse and repeat cycle, was there ever a time that you thought you had been already defeated, but then found yourself going back? And what was the difference between the time that you finally said, you know what, I'm done, versus those other times?
You know what? I want to say it like this, and I want to be intentional when I say it like this. I'm a hustler. I can talk my way into and out of anything.
Yeah.
So what might not look like fun to other people
Mm-hmm.
was actually a key moment for me. So
Mm-hmm.
even though I was locked up and continuously locked up, my situation wasn't as bad. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have outside support, but I went in there and got my hustle on, and was the king of the jail, so to speak. And
Gotcha.
it never was hard like that.
Mm-hmm.
There are times when I heard the message of recovery and I thought I was ready for it. I might have listened to it for brief moments,
Mm-hmm.
but in all actuality, I wasn't ready for it, because the minute I get that thought in my head about what's happening on the block, there I go trotting off down to the block. And like I said, so this life altering moment came that utterly defeated me.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say it defeated me, it literally had me in like an out of body experience, looking at myself, shaking my head, saying, "What are you doing? Ain't you tired?" And I was utterly humiliated, and I was tired. And at that point, I was ready to lay down and give up my life, because I maybe had a flash. I rose out of my body. I saw what I was doing. And not only that, I had a flash toward the future. And I was like, I've been doing this for so long. I'm getting old. I can't keep doing this. And
Time just fly by, don't it?
yeah, and also I was raised, so I wasn't allowed to run wild. I was raised. I had a mother, I had a father. I was raised in a church. Both of my parents worked for the city. We
Mm-hmm.
had some coin. We had 2 cars. I grew up in a house, a
Yeah.
front yard and backyard. My mom wouldn't even let me go into a project or anything like that.
Okay.
Um, so a lot of times my earlier life kept flashing back, and I kept saying to myself, my mother ain't raised me like this.
Right.
Like,
Right.
really, like,
Yeah.
come on,
I know that
so
part.
when I was slapped silly into truth.
Mhm. Yeah.
I said, I'm tired. And as it happened, I was also arrested for the last time.
Mhm.
And when I went before the judge, usually they see this big telephone book of a rap sheet I have, and it's always throw away the key, lock me up under the jail. We're not
Mhm.
giving you no opportunities. You're a frequent flyer. Um,
Yeah.
but I guess the judge really kind of like peeked over at me from his paperwork on the podium, and he saw somebody standing there in front of him in utter total defeat,
Mm.
and he saw that. And you
Mm.
know what this good man did for me?
Sound like he took pity on you.
He took pity on me and he sent me to a program, not just a program. He picked me up out of my environment. I'm New York City born and bred. When I was hustling, I was out in Harlem. I was out on the Deuce on 42nd Street.
Mhm.
There wasn't an inch of New York City I didn't know where to make some money at, to hustle, to cop from, to pick up a package.
Mhm.
He did me the
Dedicated to that street.
Yeah, he did me the tremendous favor of not only giving me a program, he gave me a program out of my environment. I'm from the city. He sent me all the way out to Suffolk County, Long Island.
Mm.
That's
Mm.
like an hour train ride. I
Yeah.
didn't even know where I was going, but in that environment, I thrived.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I still had to come back to the city because I was still on parole.
Mhm.
But I started hearing the message.
Mm.
I was in a
Go from
sober
those
house.
distractions.
Yes, I was attending a program during the day and living in a sober house.
Mm.
And in the sober house, what we did for recreation all the way out there in Suffolk County at the end of the island was go to NA meetings. That was our recreation. And then you had the NA meetings that had the little parties and the anniversaries. That was our chance to dance and holler and hoop it up.
Mm.
Um, there was nothing like I could go outside and look this way and look that way and see somebody working or see something happening that
Yeah.
I needed. And that was what I needed
Yeah.
to give me a chance to be reflective, to be
Yeah.
intentional,
Yeah.
and get my head on straight.
Yeah.
So I went out to this program. I excelled. I graduated. I started running a sober house. Um, and I still didn't know what to do with my life. I was still out there on the island. I was out of work, out of the program, looking for a job. Got a job at Bender and Bender, being a case manager and helping people file for Social Security. Um, got traumatized there because I also suffer from mental health issues, and I also suffered at that time for not feeling good enough because I was still going through my process.
Mm.
And them folks, that's all I'm gonna say.
Them folks. And for
Them
everybody that's
folks
listening, they either know who them folks is or they
Yeah,
don't.
them folks talked down to me so much, made me feel something smaller than what I was, that I was thoroughly traumatized when they finally fired me. And at that point, I was glad they fired me, because when you have me in the bathroom crying, struggling not to go and punch you in your face, going back to my roots,
Mhm.
then there's a problem.
And Skip, a lot of folk don't understand how them folk treat people, and it becomes traumatizing. And
Hmm.
many times we have to struggle
Hmm.
with our own emotional uprising because of that.
Hmm.
It's like you said, should I go punch this mug in the face and get the steam off, or should I swallow it? Because of
Exactly.
how we come up, it's like if you do something wrong to me, I punch you in the face, I hit you in the head.
Exactly. And guess what? I
It's a
could do the
struggle.
time because I've done plenty of time.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah,
know you within an inch of your life right now?
yeah. And they don't know.
Instead, because I had grown,
Yeah,
I was in the bathroom crying
yeah,
to stop myself
yeah.
from. And around that time, I didn't know anything about peer support.
Mhm.
I knew somewhat of it because when you're in the rooms, when you're in NA, and I was very much into NA,
Mhm.
you learn about how someone who is the same or similar to
Mhm.
you can use them as a mentor, as a support
Mhm.
mechanism. You can lean on them.
They're a little bit
So
up the road than you are.
yeah, some of my cronies that we kicked up and danced to house music at these parties was also counselors and the director of the program that I was in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting up in their backyard playing around in their pool, having a barbecue. And then
Mm-hmm.
the next day I'm getting in trouble because I didn't do my homework when we at the program. But that's how small Suffolk
Yeah.
County was.
Yeah.
Your counselors and all of them, they was also your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, these women that I met out there helped me grow up.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in the system. I
Mm-hmm.
started going to Rikers Island before Rosem Singer Center was built. I was in the old woman's house. I
Okay.
then was one of the first inmates in the Rosem Singer Center.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up there. So navigating life outside of that institution without me getting high was something I needed to learn. I needed to learn about relationships. I needed to learn how to do this without having to pick up a mind or mood altering substance.
What
I,
told you or convinced you that you had to start learning this stuff and not stay in the other realm that you had been in for so long?
I saw the differences. I felt the differences. I was always mature for my age because I was always around a lot of older people who kind of
Mhm.
led me into doing things.
Yeah.
But having a relationship inside versus coming outside and having one, I didn't know nothing about that.
Yeah, it's different.
Having a friend
Mhm.
with no expectations,
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about that. When you grow up inside, it's called institutionalization. You don't really show it, but you do everything by the rules and things as you learned inside. So you're not letting nobody get that close to you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Those rules are different.
I even had to learn how to speak up and talk about my feelings.
Right.
Because
You
where we
can't show your
came from,
feelings.
we don't do that. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
You show anger,
Yeah.
frustration, but that's about it.
But that's it. Do we go and say, yo, I'm really having a bad time. I just really need to talk to someone. We don't do none of that. We don't do, just like we don't use therapy and things like that.
Mhm.
This is all stuff that I learned and I learned to utilize.
Mhm.
Um, I one day saw, and this will tell you how old I am, but if anybody says anything, I'm gonna punch them in the face, straight cheek. There was an ad in a
You better
newspaper.
hope to get your age.
Exactly. There was an ad in the newspaper. Now, these kids today, they don't know nothing but Indeed and Idealists and things like
Right.
that.
Ain't no
Back in the
more newspaper.
days, you bought a newspaper and got you a pen and
Want ads.
circled something,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
highlighted.
and picked up the phone, a wall phone at that, and
Yeah.
called them. We ain't
Yes,
had no
sir.
cell phones and
Oh,
things
no.
like that,
You
unless you
talking
was
my talk.
unless you was hustling and making money. You
Right.
feel
Yeah,
what I'm
big
saying?
old phone then. Big old brick phone.
Exactly. You needed a whole bag to carry that phone.
No doubt.
Um, and it said something, and I'll never forget it because it was a turning point in my life. It said, "Have you been impacted by the criminal justice system?
Mm,
Are you in recovery from addiction and mental health issues? Have you been homeless?"
mm.
And I said, what is this? Is somebody in my head? This is a job. They want this type of experience I have.
Right, right.
Because when I come home, I got to jump through some hoops to get a good job, which means I
Right.
have to dumb down where
Right.
I've been and
Yep.
what I've been doing. I have fake resumes. I got friends on standby with a copy of the resume. So you're my reference. These
Yeah.
people on the call you, here's what you say.
Hmm.
um if I knew that it was going to do a background check, I was like, oh, I can't fuck with them.
Right,
Excuse me.
right, right, right. No,
I was
you're
like,
good.
I can't mess with them. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? But all of a sudden I read about a job that wants everything that I have. Of course I'm curious, and
Right.
I go down to this job and I actually get this job, and how this job has such an impact on me. I got the job the day Michael Jackson died.
Oh, wow.
And this job was for a peer specialist. I
Hmm.
did not know what a true peer specialist was.
Hmm.
On Rikers Island, I worked as a suicide prevention aide, which is kind of like someone that is just available to talk to other inmates about any feelings they're having, trying to help them navigate, especially first time people who are locked up. They don't know what's going on. They don't know how to use the phone. Plus you're going to juke them because you're going to get them, give them all your knowledge, but you're going to get them for the little commissary and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Um,
No doubt, but I know the game.
yeah.
Yeah.
but that's what I was doing. I had no idea that there was something called peer support,
Mm.
and I was hired as a peer for the Rainbow Heights Club that was in Brooklyn, and I used to come out from Long Island and make it into Brooklyn to do this job. In this job, I learned about peer support, what it is and what it isn't. And finally, I felt like I had landed on something that didn't care about my background, that actually wanted the history I have.
Strength.
And I excelled at that. And my next step was my director, who kind of recognized that there was something great in me.
Hmm.
It was coming out, it wasn't there. I just needed opportunities. He saw this position to be an assistant to a well-known advocate on the New York statewide level, and they
Mm.
were hiring for an assistant. They wanted somebody to build up, develop a leader in them, so to speak. And he saw that ad, and this is the director of my then job. He
Hmm.
sends me this in an email, and all he says is, "I'm just saying." And
Again, for those who know, no.
yeah, and I looked at it, I thought about it, and finally I decided to jump out on some faith, and I got that job.
Right.
And that job opened me up to advocacy, working in mental health and substance abuse,
Hmm.
and advocacy, still as a peer, still
Hmm.
guided by my lived
Yeah.
experiences and helping other people. I
Hmm.
learned how to advocate. I learned how to sit at the table during a meeting. I learned how to be on a board. I learned how to create things, and my career kind of took off. So
No.
this was from the day Michael Jackson died, and I've been working in peer support ever since that day. Now, peer support is someone who uses their lived experiences to help mentor and assist others.
Hmm.
We don't tell people what to do, but we're there to create mutuality, not to glorify, but to say, "Hey, I went through that too. This is how I made it out. Use
Right.
me as a mentor." I have
Absolutely.
moved up in that. So I moved up in there, and then what happened? And I just kept working successfully, better jobs. I became the only peer supervisor at the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, which is New York City's kind of like major health services on the government side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are still some places where when you are a peer, you're stigmatized.
Absolutely.
The same as you would be if you're just doing something and they found out, oh, you've been in jail.
Hmm.
Um, Stigmatized as well. But there were still
Absolutely.
some places that I was stigmatized, and I got tired of being stigmatized. And while I always said I had a PhD of life, I
Yeah.
didn't need to go back to school. I did my PhD on substance abuse programs.
Right.
I wrote my master's on homelessness.
Yeah.
Um, on that park bench is
Yeah.
where I did my thesis
Yeah.
on how to
Talk that
hustle.
talk.
You know what I'm saying?
Talk
I
that
always
talk.
said
No doubt.
I don't need them letters behind my name. I don't need to go back to school.
I
But
was just telling some people today. I said there are so many people who have never been to school, and they are
mhm,
much more brighter than those of us who have degrees. They just
mhm.
haven't gone to school. If not much more brighter, way more brighter.
Exactly. And I said that. I said, I'm intelligent. You can tell I'm intelligent. I got the gift of gab that comes from my hustling days. So yeah, I could talk to you about anything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no, I don't need those letters, those PhDs and masters and BAs behind
Yeah.
my name. But what happened is that the more I got into policy, I did some voluntary things. I advocated for some things. I was the head of some coalitions. Moving forward, the idea of lived experiences, the more I was invalidated, the more I said that I need to do something to even the playing field. And what I realized is that in order to effect change in policy and procedure, in order to sit at the table with the policymakers, I need to know the same collegial rhetoric that they know.
Mm.
I need to know about critical analysts. I need to know about critical thinking.
Yeah.
I need to know how to string together a professional proposal. I
Yeah.
got my street smarts.
Right.
Never going to leave them.
Right.
But the
The
same way that I
professional
can
side.
stand on a corner and
Mhm.
kiki with the fellas,
Yeah.
um,
Got
I
to be
need
able to
to be
rock that
able to sit
boardroom.
in a boardroom.
Yeah. Talk about how important that is.
That is
That
so
professionalism.
important because as the idea for people with lived experiences to be pushed forward, to implement change,
Hmm.
we still have to speak and we have to think
Hmm.
like those that are in power
Yeah.
have done
Yeah.
since the millennium.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
do we need to sharpen our skills?
Hmm.
Yes, we do. I cannot sit in a boardroom and ask somebody for $1 million grant and be like, yo, my nigga, what up? What's
Right.
good?
Right.
Yo,
Right.
hand me the coin
Right.
and we good. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I
You got to
can't,
be
I
able to
can't,
shape that.
I can't do that. Again,
I
like
heard
I said,
somebody say before, Skip, I heard them say that's what you call being multi-dialectical, being
exactly,
able to speak other people's language, you know,
exactly, exactly. And still remain true to yourself.
right, and can bridge the gap between both worlds or two
Exactly.
worlds or
So
whatever.
at the same time that I was realizing that, a program opened up in John Jay, and it was called the Navigator Program for Community Justice and Social
Mhm.
Service.
Mhm.
And basically, the premise was that they were looking for directly impacted people. And what they were going to do was give them some college education type courses.
Mhm.
I teach them how to work in social justice agencies,
Mhm.
working in social justice, working in community justice. And it also came with college credits.
Dope.
I did that. And the first time I walked up in there thinking I knew everything, I was already working in social service.
Mhm.
I had gone to the top of my profession. I was a peer supervisor, had
Mhm.
a team under me, was making good coin.
Yeah.
Um, but I walked in there thinking I knew everything.
Mhm.
And the professor, a black professor, he looked at me and said, write me a 5-page paper in APA style. I said, huh?
What?
What?
Yeah.
I was so shook. I gave him 10 pages with
Yeah.
no sites. I didn't even know what APA style was.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
he started talking to me about agency. I said, huh?
Yeah.
Agency? Ain't
Yeah.
that some place where you go to beg for some food
Right.
stamps,
Right.
some?
Right. Right. Or
I
get
didn't
a
even
temp
know.
job.
I didn't even know what agency meant.
Yeah. 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 There's
But
always
I
room to grow,
learned.
right? Always
I
room.
learned exactly, and I opened myself up to learning. And
Yeah.
the next thing you know, I done caught the fever. I'm like, oh, I need to go back to school.
Yeah.
I like what I'm learning. I
It's
like using
nice,
my
isn't it?
brain
Yeah.
in this way. And
It rewires your thinking.
mhm, where I wanted to go to school was the same college that did the program, John Jay College
Mhm.
of Criminal Justice.
Mhm.
They looked at me and said, "Oh, where are your SAT scores?" I said, "Honey boo boo, I left out of school at 16. I'm in my early 50s. I
Yeah.
don't even remember taking a SAT
Right.
test at
Right.
all."
Right.
She said to me, well, then you can't come here. You need to go to a community college for 2 years. And I was really disgusted at that. I felt that was like a step back. And I
Mhm.
had to think about it. But at the same time, somebody told me about St. Francis College, which is a
Mhm.
private 4-year Franciscan college that costs
Mhm.
like 30,000 a year. They
Oh.
were building out a program called Justice Initiatives, where if you have criminal justice impact, they will enroll you in school, and anything past financial aid is free. They will give you a scholarship for that. Now we're talking about a private 4-year Franciscan college.
Mhm.
Tuition is like 30,000 a year.
Mhm.
But if you are justice impacted, they're saying, come on over.
Wow.
I started going there in 2019 as a freshman. I was really excited about being in school because
Mhm.
I did have 2 years of college
Right.
when I was about 18, but those 2 years of college was spent going from student union to student union. And back then house music was just coming out, and the
Right. So
student
let me get the
unions
credits.
was rocking on different days, and Monday was St. John's, and Tuesday was York College, and Wednesday was another school. So it wasn't about classes, it was about hanging out, jamming to that house music. And by the way, I'm still a house head to this day. So basically those whole 2 years I messed up.
So let me ask you a couple of questions,
Hmm.
because we're about to run out of time. and I
Yeah.
wanted to, just hit you with a couple of questions. But first, I wanted to make an observation because you said something earlier about how you got taken out of the city and you went out to Long Island, and the importance of just changing environment, and how that change of environment helped you start to reflect and really go back to how you were raised, to those values that your mama and them
Mhm.
gave you when you were coming up. And
Exactly.
it also made me think about when I was growing up, my mom had a
Mhm.
whole lot of plants in the house. And
Mhm.
sometimes she would take the plants and change
Mm.
the environment because the plant was dying. She put it in a bigger pot or a smaller pot,
Mhm.
move it in a
Mhm.
different room, further away from the window, closer to the
Mhm.
window, and the
Mhm.
plant would grow. So just hearing you talk about yourself like that made me think about those plants. But
Mhm.
that's just one observation. There's a bunch of stuff, but one of the other things I wanted to ask you is what would you say is what would you say is maybe most important for someone who's finding themselves struggling with going in and out of prison, in and out of jail, hung up on drugs and alcohol and crime? What would be the most important thing for them to get in order?
I first of all, you have to believe in yourself, and not only believe in yourself, you have to believe in the fact that there is something greater out there for you.
Mhm,
The recovery is about the hope and the promise that there is something better. Once you start believing that, you might not know what that something
mhm,
better is, but if you can believe it, you
mhm,
can reach it. I don't care who you believe in, what religion you
mhm,
ascribe to. Put a
mhm.
rock in a paper bag and put it on your front lawn and believe
Yeah,
in that.
yeah.
You
Hope,
know,
faith,
exactly.
your potential
Exactly.
to rise above your current condition.
Exactly.
That's
Allow
dope.
that to guide you,
Mm,
and you will be guided. And as you are opening up to the process, as you're leaning into the process,
mhm.
be open, because there's going to be opportunities that's going to come at you that you don't even know where they're coming from,
Yeah, yeah.
and
And
be open to them.
and on top of that, and I dig that, and that sounds so very close to my own experiences and the experiences of other
Mhm.
people I've talked to. And one of the other things I think is also important, and shine on this or spit on it one way or the other. But I think persistence. People have to be
Of course.
persistent too, because
Of
there might be
course.
some setbacks, you
Of
know,
course.
the frustrations and whatnot, and people want to
Uh,
go back to the block, go back to the bottle, go back to the blunt, whatever it is they do.
but you use that, but just use that in a new way. The
Hmm.
same way you was out there hustling for $1, making
Hmm.
sure that package was correct, making sure you could get another package.
Hmm.
Hustle for your life.
Yeah.
Use that same hustle tendency to bring about your version of wellness. Everybody
Oh,
is the master of their own life.
absolutely.
Once you figure out what your version of wellness is, you move heaven and earth to go for it, because ain't nobody going to give it to you.
And that's the true meaning of education, I think,
Hmm.
which is really being able to bring forth that which is latent, that which is within inside of you.
Exactly.
So how about this? Two other things. Um, if you were to capture your journey in a title or in a phrase, what would that be?
Oh my goodness. I'm going to give you two.
Shoot.
My first one is there before the grace of God go I. And I say that often because it could have been another way. It didn't have to be this way.
Hmm.
My second one, Amanda Gorman,
The
when she
poet.
gave the inaugural
Hmm.
poem right after they overran the Capitol, she
Hmm.
had a phrase in there that is my backbone. She said, "For there is always light if you're brave enough to see it.
Oh yeah, that was.
There is always light if you're brave enough to be it." I am that brave person. I am brave enough to see it, and I am brave enough to be it.
Oh man, sis, I got goosebumps just remembering her saying that and just
Hmm.
picturing you with that emblazoned across your soul, blazing across your heart.
Hmm.
And I'm
I
thinking
thank you,
about
brother.
and so many other people who've been, down similar roads that you and I
Hmm.
have traveled. If they can take that and be brave enough to see it
And
and to
that's all
be,
it is.
yeah.
And you will excel, you will shine, you will rise above. And one other thing, I
Mhm.
am unapologetic. I will not apologize to you or anyone about my history, about my lived experiences. but I will use those experiences for betterment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm with you.
Hmm And that
So,
and that is it.
yeah. And yo, thank you so much for sharing your story with me. I got goosebumps
Thank you.
listening to your
Thank you.
story. You articulated it so well. Anybody that listens to it can see it happening, and I
Mhm.
think that if they have been on similar roads, they can learn from you, glean from you, and take that wisdom to propel themselves forward. And
Thank
so
you.
if people wanted to reach you, how can they reach you?
Oh, my email, can I put it in the chat or should I say it out loud? It's
Say it
kind of
out loud. Yeah.
okay. My email is capital NYC, capital JPI, capital E, lowercase XE, capital DIR at cases.org. I am the executive director of the New York City Justice Peer Initiative, where I am building a justice peer certification for those of us who are directly impacted. You can also reach me on LinkedIn, Helen Skipper. You can reach me on Twitter at Pridism, and I'm here and I'm not leaving until I create and do some things.
Dope, dope. Yo, this was
Thank you.
dope. I really appreciate this
I
conversation.
appreciate you, brother, for all you do and all you put forth and how you shine a light on our stories. And these are the things that need to get out there. Stop talking about the violence. Stop talking about the gangbangers. Stop talking about the recidivism.
Mhm.
Talk about those of us who are directly impacted, who are
Absolutely,
making changes in our community. Shine the
absolutely.
spotlight on us.
And that's just what I want to do, to let the
Mm,
people who are doubting us realize that we have something to give. And the people who
mhm.
are like us, who are not sure if they have something to give, to realize that they too have something to give.
Yes, you do.
you know?
Yes,
And
you
so
do.
I want to also, this Zoom call is going to cut off soon, but I want to tell you
Okay.
about, I'm just going to stop the recording, but I want to tell you about the